Hey everyone, this is Olay from Laddering Your Success, and you're listening to the LYS Podcast.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Good afternoon. It's a nice sunny day out here in Houston. We are back this week for another Sunday of free student mentoring brought to you by LYS, Laddering Your Success. My name is Olay. I'm here as always with Festus. Festus, how you doing today?
Hey, what's up, bro? Doing very well, man. Just like you said, living it up, enjoying the Sunday. And yeah, man, we did this really interesting service at church today, which is, I think it was much needed, the first time in a long time, but they called it a sacred assembly. And so it was just us coming together to just like repent and get stuff off our chest and it's interesting because it's like, it wasn't, people get preached at to repent, but the thing is a lot hasn't been taught, you know what I mean? And so I just think it's one of those things when you go months and months or years and years and something hasn't really been taught, you know what I mean? And it's a different for somebody to explain something, and it's some difference for somebody to demonstrate something, you know what I mean? So I think that was really, really, really cool and refreshing,
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome, man. I'm glad you had a chance to do that. So let's get right into it. As always, folks, make sure you get in contact with us on our different avenues. Instagram, we've got LYS students and _LYS. On Facebook, we've got Laddering Your Success. Just type that in the search bar. You'll be able to find us and all of our videos and things that we have to offer. On YouTube, more videos, right? You get to hear some really cool stories on people who have been able to get a lot of money in scholarship and financial aid and grants just by following some of the things we teach in Laddering Your Success. And of course, on TikTok, LYS Be No Do, right? TikTok been kind of acting funny on us. I don't know what they're doing. They must know that we are coding the game, so they've been trying to shut us down little by little. But it's okay. We're gonna keep pushing on.
Yeah, that's why we need y'all's help, man. Y'all go ahead and help us out. Hit that share button, hit that like button. The thing is, you got to get past that algorithm. So help us out.
Absolutely. As always, we've got the boss. We've got the young boss in the house. One and only Daniel Hill. How you doing today, man? Good seeing you.
Yeah. What's up with y'all? Y'all good?
Oh yeah, real good.
Absolutely.
Real good.
Doing good.
Good to see y'all.
Absolutely. So we're going to be continuing on today with a conversation that we started 2 weeks ago. And hopefully this will be really, really good. I think we came up with some really good questions that we're going to ask and talk about, because I think a lot of times you'll say a word and people will be like, okay, I know what that is, right? But do you really understand how intertwined culture, well, first of all, do you really understand what are the tenets or what makes up culture? And then do you understand how the different aspects of culture kind of intertwine with life and why we feel the way we do about certain things, why we see things a certain way, why we speak a certain way about things in our lives and around us. So I think that's what makes culture such a unique thing to talk about. So a couple of weeks ago, we began talking about it, right? Can y'all see where it says learned behaviors?
No, you're on. Okay, there you go. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know. So you can see when I have this here.
What's that? The
faces.
Which faces?
Like the little screens. You can see when the screens. So
Okay, so we can only see certain ones, and it depends because sometimes there's a lag.
Okay, can you see where it says learned behaviors?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the right.
Is it being blocked by anything?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought because I have the view of the monitor of where you can see everyone. So I wasn't sure if it was blocking.
No. That doesn't.
Okay.
So on Zoom, I know what you're talking about. You mean the little floating box?
Yeah, little floating blocks.
No. That's yeah. They actually, you can see the box, but we can only see what you're showing us.
Okay. Just making sure. I was like, what? I've been blocking this content for all this time. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry.
Nah, man.
Awesome. All right, good. All right, so so we talked about culture being learned behaviors, right? And another thing that we talked about that's really, really important, we're going to get back to this in a couple of minutes, is the fact that culture is one of those things that fluctuates. It fluctuates. And I'll give you an example. When we were younger, I remember seeing bell bottoms. And bell bottoms were these pants that closer to the bottom, they kind of opened up like a bell.
This guy's going way back.
And the funny thing is, just a couple of days ago, I saw a young lady open the door for me. Oh, I'm sorry. When we were growing up, that was old. That was what they were in the 70s.
70s, exactly.
Mm-hmm. In the 90s, it kind of came back in the form of Jinko jeans, but Jinko jeans were like wide from the...
They were flare bottoms. They were flare instead of bell, yeah.
Okay, right, okay. So a couple of days ago, someone held the door for me. I forgot where I was, but I said thank you, and I'm usually looking down when I walk. And I looked, and I saw her pants. I was like, she's got bell bottoms. Why? Okay. And so in my mind, whenever I see things from the past, I'm like, oh, it must be coming back in style. It's cyclical, or it's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we mean when we say things fluctuate. I mean, what is popular today may not be so popular tomorrow, but it may be popular again 5, 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, right? We talked about the 4 different aspects of culture, culture being language. All right, and we went over language. We talked about different things that the kids talk about, different words that they use. We talked about the fact that language is the most important mark of culture. It defines who can be easily communicated with, but it also restricts who can be communicated with. So if you don't understand that language, you're going to be missing out. There's going to be certain aspects that you're not going to be able to understand. There's going to be actually a whole lot of really important things that you're not going to be able to understand because you don't understand the main form of communication within that culture, right? And then we talked about formal versus informal, right? And that's just basically saying, how do you greet your friends? How do you greet, professional people in a professional environment, people like your boss, people like your coworkers, if you're in a very organized or a very cultured event, right? How do you act? What's the language required of you there? And informal. This is the language that you use at home with your brothers and your sisters, your mom and your dad, to an extent, your friends, acquaintances, close relatives, right? That you're comfortable with, that are around the same age as you, right? That's more informal. And then that we talked about what formal is again, something that's officially sanctioned or recognized, right? And then we kind of broke down the word in and informal. And this is one of those things where, just like in language, if you understand how things are broken down, it can help you understand, or it can help you have a general idea of what a word means. You may not know what a word means, but if you understand prefix and suffix, and you understand how words are kind of created, you can have a general idea or understanding of what a word means just by understanding the prefix and suffix. And that's what we mean when we talk about understanding language. One of the important things that we're going to be talking about here in a couple of minutes is the importance that history has and a lot of the things that we learn, right? How does the history affect the way languages, location, traditions, and customs, history, how they all come together? Of course, one of my favorite words is, bro, we talked about how you can say the same word and use it with a different pitch, different intonation, and it has different meanings, right? So like if you get in trouble at the house, you're gonna be like, bruh, right? If someone tells you a crazy story, you'll give a long, exaggerated bruh, right? So it has different meanings. Man, I can't remember there was one that I saw on Facebook. I think it was when someone says, you good? You can say the 2 words, you good, in about 8 different ways, and it means like so many different things. Like if someone gets beaten up in a fight, pat them on the back, you good? Someone's going through something really, really emotional, You good, bro? You good?
I thought that was you straight. I thought that was you straight.
Well, maybe it's you straight. Are you?
Yeah,
Maybe
like,
it's you straight.
You straight? You straight? Hey, you straight, man? Hey, you straight?
Maybe it's you straight, exactly. But that's what we're talking about. You can use the same words, but just change the pitch or the intonation of the words. I think it's intonation, and it'll have different meanings, depending on the situation on how you use it. All right, and so then we're going into a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today, and that is location. We're going to be talking about location. Location is the next biggest factor when it comes to culture. Where you are located on the map is very important because it determines the types of food that are available. It determines who your neighbors are. It determines what type of weather you have, and even more. The climate sets the limits on what can be a steady part of your diet, right? You got to think about that. Where you are located determines what's going to be local to you as far as diet. Think about things like Florida oranges, or New England clam chowder, or avocados from Mexico. My kids love singing that song in the classroom, right? This is true in certain parts of major cities where grocery stores aren't located for miles. You got to think about that. What is near you, right? And that's a big part of location. It's also true in smaller towns where some types of food aren't available. The climate and location also sets the stage for the types of activities that people can engage in, such as playing sports or going to the beach, right? So think about that. We're out here in Texas. One of the big parts, actually, I think these two are pretty big. If you had a average, childhood in Texas, I think these would be two things you would have done at some point in your rearing in your young years, right?
Except if you're Nigerian, you ain't going to.
You're not going to.
You're not going to the beach.
But definitely, right? If you're in high school, you're probably going to be playing football, or you're going to be going to a football game, right? And also, a big part of that is going to the beach. If you're in Texas, especially in the southern part, you're very close to the Gulf. So you're going to be spending, you'll take at least one trip out there, to the beach at some point. And so those are things that are very unique to culture, as opposed to if you live somewhere like Wyoming, right? I can't speak much on it, right? Because I don't know too many people from Wyoming, but I do know that Wyoming is closer to the middle of the country. It's landlocked. So going to the beach is not probably a normal occurrence that would happen for someone in Wyoming. Maybe football is, maybe there's a lot of rural areas, right? It's not as densely populated as some of the some of the other states, but maybe there's something that's very unique to that area, right? And that's what we talk about when we talk about location. Because of where you are on the map, so many things that you do are represented just because of where you're located, right? And that's the importance of location. You guys got anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because now with internet and with social media, like there is this sense that the world is a lot smaller. You know what I mean? And so there's this almost kind of connotation with it that it's like, oh, just because I could talk to you online, it means that we're kind of closer together. And the thing is that we have to keep in mind is that experience and having an experience. Okay, but and having an experience actually it matters. The fact that when you link up with somebody, you can smell them, you can taste the air, like you're talking about going to the beach, you can feel the saltiness against your skin. You know what I mean? Like those different experiences matter. And why do I say all this? Because, now they got metaverse and all that stuff out there, and, people could be for and against it or whatever, what have you. I'm not here to judge if a person is for or against it. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, when you're leveraging technology and using technology in this way, to me, there has to be like a balanced approach. You know what I mean? Of like, okay, I get that the culture says this, right? But because I'm not there, doesn't mean I have to buy all the way into it. You know what I'm saying? Or vice versa, where it's like, just because this is how we do it over here, and if somebody's educating me on something, maybe I can pick up some stuff from there and where they're at, and implement it in my life here, even though it's two totally different spaces. So I think people just need to think through that as they mature. You know what I'm saying? So, Daniel, you're on mute. You was gonna say something.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, man. I was just over here saying the same thing you was, man. I was agreeing, man. Like you said, people have it's kind of like people got their own opinions or think they know actually what something is or what something isn't. Because I'll never forget this one time in class, there was this Army dude, right? And no, he was Marines. And like he lived over a certain place for like a year, 9 months, a year, 2 years, right? Then there's a teacher in our class, he done read these books. He over trying, and then the teacher said something about, okay, over there, the people live like this. And he's like, no, they don't. The people are like this and this and this. And he's like, son, you know how he was? He's like, look, I actually know how it is over there. And then me, being me, I mean, I'm in class. I was like, okay, bro. All right, bro. Have you been over there? He said, yeah, man. I actually lived there for like 9 months, a year, 2 years. So then after that, I actually turned to the teacher. I said, have you been over there? No. I was like, then how you gonna tell him? He like actually went off in middle of college class. But this is like people, I don't know, say people have to open their minds and understand, like you have to learn and go see for yourself. You can't just assume something is or something isn't, man. I actually like what you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing now, especially in this younger generation, like y'all, you know how the Gen Zers will sometimes like almost like shut down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes that whole like little weird shutdown thing that they do, I consider it weird, but some people might not, you know what I mean?
No, it's weird.
Everybody, it's weird, right? Yeah.
It's weird, bro.
So, they'll just get quiet. Is literally sometimes because they have information in their head and you're challenging that information, and for whatever reason they don't want to almost be exposed, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't have the relational skills to have a dialogue about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be like, oh, okay, well, kind of like you said, well, let me just ask a simple question, you know what I mean? That's little simple question is the major difference between understanding, you know what I'm saying? And that's the whole point of mentoring, coaching, helping people out, all this stuff that is out here and stuff people trying to do. The difference is just asking a question, you know what I mean? That gives you that little difference. So
Facts.
Wonderful points. There's a book, actually one of my favorite books,
Miles Monroe.
No, it's not a Miles Monroe book, but shout out to one of my spiritual mentors, Miles Monroe. This one is a book by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's called The Four Agreements. And one of the agreements is don't make assumptions. It's very easy to do that, right? It's very easy to look at someone and say, oh, you're from this place, therefore you do X, Y, and Z. Or you speak this language, therefore you do X, Y, Z, or you act like X, Y, and Z. When you build someone up in your mind, it goes back to what we've been talking about. You build someone up in your mind, it affects the way you talk to them, it affects the way you treat them, it affects the way you handle them. It automatically changes a lot about your relationship with that person if you make an assumption. And it's something that I've tried to implement in my life and practice. And it's very, very good I've seen it when you do it. When you just when you just appreciate and accept people for their personhood and who they are, it's one of those things that goes a long way. And it's really beautiful because people can appreciate that. People see that. People know. We have this, I don't want to say it's a sixth sense, but we can tell when people are looking at us and talking to us like they care about us. And we usually tend to gravitate towards those people, or we keep them around us, right? Because we know that they kind of have your best interest, or, you kind of know that they'll do the right thing, right? And that's what we try to teach here at LYS. Be, know, do. Being, knowing, doing. Being, understanding the personhood of who you are, knowing what are available resources out there to help me so I can be and I can do, so I can be and know, and doing, right? Executing with excellence. So that's what we talk about here at Laddering Your Success. So continuing on, if I can get this to continue on for me. let's break down something here real quick. We're talking about location and things that are unique to location. We talked about Texas, high school football, and going to the beach, right? Hanging out. Some of us may have, some of our parents may have land or farms. That's another big thing, right? Just going out, hanging out. One of the things we got to think about, at least here in America, America is very diverse, but neighborhoods tend to be more oriented around socioeconomics. This is a very big thing that we deal with here. Socioeconomics. That means that people make the same amount of money and they tend to live together. People who make the same type of money or same amount of money tend to live together. If we break down this word socioeconomics, we get socio, which means social. And this is interactions between people. Right? So anytime you see that word social or soci something, SOCI, right? We're talking about interactions between people and people interactions, right? People selling to each other, people communicating with each other, right? People, it could be kids playing together. It could be families and communities together. That's what we talk about when we talk about socio or social. When we talk about economics, this is an old Greek word that comes from house rules. And when you think about house rules, I don't want you to think about house rules like, not bedtime, curfew. Curfew is 11 p.m., no dishes. There should be no dishes in the sink after 8 p.m., things like that. Yes, you kind of have, of course, those are house rules, right? But we're talking about the behavior of the house. How is the house being ran, right? Is everything needed? If you have dishes, that means you have food, right? Are you able to purchase food, right? To even have dishes, that's what we're talking about, right? House rules, how is the house ran? Or financial behaviors, right? You will have a very clear understanding of these things if you've lived in your neighborhood for a while. You may have had friends whose parents had very similar rules, very similar types of food that they ate or that you ate, and other things like you. Very important thing that we got to understand, though, is due to ethnic diversity in the United States, you may have had friends from another culture that like to eat foods from the part of the world where they came from. Those interactions may have rubbed off on you for better or for worse, right? I can give you an example. When I was growing up, we lived in Spring Branch, and there was a majority Hispanic population that we lived in. And I remember one time I actually got in trouble. I went to a friend's house after school. I was supposed to go to daycare, and we were hanging out, and his mom made us food. We were working on this project. I still remember it, 4th grade. We were working on this project, and we were doing something about whales. And so we're drawing whales and stuff. Mind you, I'm already in trouble because I should have been in daycare, but I was actually kind of proud of myself. I was like, I gotta be responsible. I gotta get my project. So we're out there, we're hanging out, and his mom made us like a plate. She made us like, I'll never forget, it was like sausage and tortillas, like smoked sausage and tortillas. And I was like, oh, you just wrap it up? Man, that was like the best thing I had ever had. And it was just a smoked sausage and tortilla. I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's delicious. And, just hanging out there. And of course, his parents spoke Spanish in the house. And whenever she wanted to talk to me, whatever, she talked to me in English and stuff. And so, that was kind of like one of my first times being like, introduced into a whole nother culture. That, of course, I had a lot of friends, and there are some things that were, I don't even know these were culture or socioeconomics or ethnic, but I just remember getting cool cups and things like that. And what was it? Cool. What do you guys remember cool cups, Bowlies? I remember the cucaracha. Well, I don't know if it was a cucaracha truck, but there was a truck that would literally drive through the neighborhood, and it would play that song. It would go, and my mom would give me like $3, and she would say, "Give me like 2 onions, 3 tomatoes, and 2 green peppers. I'm about to make stew." And I had to chase after him, and it was this truck, and they just had like produce and stuff, and I had to like, yes, can I get 3 peppers, 2? This dude, and he would give it to me, and I run back and I give it to my mom, and those are just some really unique things that I remember from my from just being exposed to different cultures.
But see, this is the thing. I want to say something about that real quick, because you brought up some really good points. But it's very, very interesting how something in one culture or at a point in time could be considered or looked at a certain way. And then at another time, it's looked at totally different. So for example, those basically mobile grocery trucks, right, was looked at as, oh, these people are, by a certain group. These people are driving around with groceries in a truck. What's up with that? Well, if you consider the environment, if you consider the location, it made sense if you're in a food desert to bring food to people, right? But now, if you fast forward, 20 years, 25 years, those mobile grocery stores are happening in master plan communities, and it's cool. You see what I'm saying? And so why is that significant, and why do I say that? Is because sometimes when you're trying to be yourself, or you're being kind of in the situation that you were placed in at birth, you know what I'm saying? And certain people or certain things will make you feel bad about it. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, the cool cups. It's like cool cups. We had ice cream trucks and ice cream, and it's like, well, that was expensive. You could get a 25-cent cool cup from the old lady, you know what I'm saying, and a bag of chips and a pickle. You had $1.50, $2. You was going down. You know what I'm saying? And so these are just things that, again, culturally different, and how they change over time. You know what I mean? Like tie-dye is coming back. I don't know if you know this, but like tie-dye is about to make a comeback. And you know what? Something's funny. I said, you know what? I said this to myself like 4 or 5 years ago. I said, man, I need to make a glow-in-the-dark tie-dye collection, because I think that's what's going to be fly, especially if you like going to the club and stuff like that. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you brought it up, because that's kind of what it talks about in Matter Your Success. It says some of these things are brought up, for better or for worse, right? And it's so funny. Even today, I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm very I kind of take things as they come. So if, me going out, you going out and getting that stuff is, especially if you're a kid, right? It's normal. It's normal behavior. It's just another day in the life. Mom asked me to go get the stuff, I go get it. It flows, it makes sense. She forgot to buy onion at the grocery store. She hears a truck, go get some onions. It's great. My kid gets exercise, I get what I need. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everything is well. And it's really, it's so fascinating you said that, because I think one of the things that I dealt with growing up was this battle. Growing up in a culture, experiencing other cultures from people who look like me, and then having a completely different culture at home. So think about the 4 tenets that we talk about when we talk about culture. We talk about language, location, traditions, behavior, right? And you can put history in there as well. These things are kind of like commingling with each other in little different bits and pieces every single day, right? These things are commingling with each other every single day. And, the important thing, one of the most important things I learned was, and you hit the nail on the head, Festus, when you said it, you said being confident in who and in yourself, no matter what others may say, no matter what others may feel, right? Being confident in yourself and in who you are and in your culture. I think that's a really big key. Daniel, I'm sorry. You were going to say something?
Yes, sir, Mr. Rude. No, Mr. No, man. No, man. I was just tripping off of like my past growing up, different things. I remember like how you say over your household, y'all didn't eat ranch. Like you didn't have ranch. I remember in my household, we never had Kool-Aid. And I remember the first time I went to my friend's house, had some Kool-Aid. I was like, what is this, heaven in a container? Because I think I drank all of that Kool-Aid, bro. They were looking at me. They were looking at me like, dude, it's Kool-Aid. Have you never? I said, no, I never had no Kool-Aid. It's delicious. I just kept drinking and drinking. I remember I went to I think it was an Indian friend's house. And I mean, we walked in and they was like, it's time for dinner. No, it was with my pops. It was like, it was time for dinner. And when they went to go sit down, I saw them all sitting on the floor. I was like, why are we on the floor? if we about to eat dinner, like, or whatever. And I was like, hold on, man, there's a table over there. Why don't y'all go sit at the table? Why are we sit on the floor eat dinner? But you know me, I was like, all right, that's what it is. And I remember I had an Italian friend whose family owned like restaurants and they ate different type of things. And he asked us, did we want something to eat? We was like, of course, man, get some get something. Then he put out some squid. I was like, what is squid, bro? Like squid from the ocean? I'll never forget the first time I had it, it was just chewy. I was like, man, I can't wait to swallow this because it's taking forever. But yeah, man, culture, being around different culture, man, you learn a lot, bro. You will learn a lot.
100%.
You know, yeah, you reminded me. I feel like I could see Daniel now with the cherry red ring around his lips as he's just juggling that Kool-Aid. He may have drank it so fast, not enough of that dye had a chance to stay on his lip. But I remember when you used to drink that Kool-Aid, you had that ring. I could just see him being like, another, please?
Because I drank that whole container, bro. He's like, yes. I was so hyped up for like 2 days.
Yeah. You know, when I was in middle school, I remember one of the first times we played basketball with one of my friends outside of school. Man, I was not a good communicator. My dad, I was supposed to come home after school. I went straight to his house and I got in trouble for that too. But I just remember like them spending a lot of time, I think it was Muslim, and they spent a lot of time just washing their face after they played basketball. Washing their face, washing their hands. I don't even know if it was Muslim or just that's just what they did. I was just like, I never do that. I just like go sit down after I play. And then my dad would just be like, you stink, go take a shower, go take a shower. And yeah, you remind me of another one. My parents had a good friend. They actually just went and saw him last week. And my parents have known them almost since they came to America. So my dad got here in 82, my mom got here in 85. And so they've known him pretty much ever since they've been here. And his name is Papa. I call him Papa Singh. And he is I think he's from Equatorial Guinea. And we've known him for the longest time. And, you know, I just remember so many things like going to his house, making sure you take off your shoes before you go in the house. And that was actually the first time I had curry. Like, you know, curry, just like curry soup. That was the first time I had it at his house. And I just remember, you know, those things go a long way. And the reason why I had that question, and I thank y'all for answering it, just giving us those examples in our comments, was even though we had different experiences with different cultures, there were certain tenets, right, that were all the same. I know for my parents, one of the big things they always wanted us to have was common sense.
Use your common sense.
No, you got it, man. I tell my kids, common sense, respect for your elders, just an altruistic view of life, just wanting to do well. You know, those are some certain similarities with all cultures that I think we, especially as young people, you have to appreciate and respect, right? Because these are things that were here before you got here, and they're going to be here when you leave. And so the very, very important, fascinating things for us to think about whenever we are experiencing other cultures, because like Festus said, there's this feeling that the world is getting smaller. And if so, because of things like social media and essentially the internet, there's definitely going to have to be more of an understanding of other cultures and an understanding of the history of why those cultures are the way they are today, right? Oops. I skipped a little too much. There we go. Another question here. What are some things you notice today about different cultures and how they interact? What are some things you notice today about different cultures and how they interact today? And when I ask this question, I don't want to ask it for us as adults. I want you to put yourself in the mind of a younger person, of a, you know, anywhere from a sixth grader to, you know, sixth grade and up. What are some things you think our young people are noticing about different cultures and how they and those other cultures interact with each other? Anyone can pick it up, or if y'all wanted me to start.
Well, no, just kind of thinking through it. You know what I mean?
So, okay, you got okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So let me just say, the reason why I came up with this question is there's some things that I noticed as I teach, and one of the things I really want to do is be transparent and really get down to brass tacks with certain things. I've seen a lot of kids use the N-word, regardless of race or ethnicity, in and around the school and in the community. And it's one of those things where kids are going to use it because of where they hear it from, people around them, people on the radio, people on YouTube videos that they watch, this, that, and the third. They're going to use words like that. They're going to do that. Obviously, we know the word has become a term of endearment for a lot of people, but I don't think we really understand the power and the impact that word had historically. And that's what we talk about, especially when we talk about culture. I had to have several conversations with, some of my kids about it. And I'll give you a story. One of my students was telling me that he was getting harassed by some kids. And so I was like, what? Someone's harassing my kids? And like, if you're a teacher, if someone's messing with your kids, you could have the worst kid in the world, right? Or what everyone says is the worst kid in the world. But if someone's messing with your kid, it's like, gang, gang, what's good? Like, let's go. You know what I mean? So I said, all right, I'm gonna pull up. I said, I'm gonna pull up at the address because see what's going on. So I pulled up and, the next morning and his mother was there and he was there. We went to go talk to the boys. And my student was Hispanic and there was about 4 or 5 Black boys that were there. And I said, yeah, y'all messing with my student, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, man, he's over here using the N-word all crazy, like he wants to fight us. And we didn't know. And it was one of those things where I was like, I forgot. 2 sides to every story.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in the middle is the truth. So I looked at him and I was like, sir, I think there are some details to the story you failed to tell me about. And he was like, I was like, well, were you saying those things? He was honest. He was like, yes. And I was like, cool. And, I told him, I said, you hear them saying it, don't you? It's one of those things where you hear them saying, he's like, yeah. So because they say it, you think you can say it. And so I kind of had to talk to both of them and just give them the history. And he's dealing with 7th, 8th graders. My student was in the 5th grade. Yeah. And, I had to tell him, I was like, I told my student, I said, hey, historically, that word was meant to tell Black people that they weren't human. They were below human. And I taught my students what the word the prefix sub means, right? Sub means below or under. And I was like, that word was used to tell them that they were below human, that they were not human, that they were property, right? And I know they're using it, but they don't really understand the historical impact of where that word comes from either. And I turned to them and I said, you guys hear your friends, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, music, TV shows, you hear it being used, right? Family outings, it's become a term of endearment. You have to understand, though, that when you say things, other people who don't know or understand, they may take what you're saying and just take that as gospel. They may just take it and run with it. And it's a very important thing. It's one of those things historically that we really have to open up and have the honest conversations about. I remember I was bartending and there was a young Asian man and he was having a full conversation and every other word that came out of his mouth was the N-word to me. But I knew he wasn't calling me anything. He was just having a conversation, but that's just what he did in his circle. And it's one of those things where I know anytime someone says, you're like.
And Olay, I think.
And I'm gonna stop, go ahead.
No, I think you bring up a really good point about like training people how to interact with you, right? And also the different perspectives of history. That was one thing that, in the trip to Israel that I took, that really woke up my eyes because, it's a really diverse place, you know what I'm saying? And, we're getting some different trainings and teachings on different things. And as we we're getting those trainings and teachings, literally, we went to like a site, right? It was some site we went to. And there was 2 tour guides, our tour guide and another tour guide. Now, our tour guide was Jewish. The other tour guide was Palestinian. At the very same site, they gave 2 different stories, right? And you kind of had to decode and unwrap how they told the stories, you know what I mean? And that was a major factor, at least to me, in terms of what I took in, you know what I mean? And the same goes for like just culture and how culture kind of clashes at certain points, and people don't understand where the clash is coming from. And so often and so quickly we're triggered, you know what I'm saying? Whereas, again, somebody could have an experience, and that experience is in a cultural lens and in a cultural bubble, right? And then somebody else can have an experience that looks similar, but because of the different histories, you get a totally different outcome or interaction, you know what I'm saying? And like you said, you know, we're from Houston, and Houston's a pretty big melting pot. And again, being from the SWAT, being from A-Leaf, you know what I'm saying? There's so many different people together, and again, we all listen to, you know, Screwed Up Click and Swisher House and all this stuff. And so the thing is, there could just be this, yo, you know, the N-word type thing. But again, if you never had to really look at the history of it, or you never really took a dive into the history, like even for myself, when I stopped using the word, it was more of, I looked at the history, and looking at that history, I thought, wait a second, they're talking about you. They're talking about you. And I'll give a good example of this. And then I'll try to keep the story short. But long story short, was at the beach, was chilling. This was back in my Army days. And so we had a mission in Alabama, but we were chilling in Florida, right, at the beach. So then the guy goes, so there's a guy and there's some girls, and the guy's trying to talk to the girls. They don't really want to give him no play, you know what I'm saying, all this kind of stuff. He was an older Caucasian gentleman. I'm like, okay. So I go talk to them. He's like, man, how come they just let you talk and you was just interacting with them? Yeah, it's so cool. And I was like, well, you know, you find out information about people, and then you talk to them about the things that they're interested in, you know what I'm saying? And that's how you interact. So me and this guy then hung out for about 2.5 hours, right? Maybe even 3. Talked about all different kind of stuff. And then we get to this last little beach, and then he's chilling. He's like, hey, man, you know, you're a cool guy. This is his verbatim words. Now let's talk about those N-words. Not N-word like you N-word, but those N-words who come over here and steal our jobs. And I was like, what in the backwards universe is happening here? You know what I mean? Like, this dude was cool, buying me drinks, hanging out, but he's racist as all get out. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, this taught me a lot of different things, right? Because number one, I'm like, okay, now my military, you know, radar comes on, like, okay, how many people are watching? How many people have tracked me? You know what I'm saying? Because now you gotta, like, you know, OPSEC, you know what I'm saying? So you're like, oh, snap, you know, okay, where's the security at? Okay, who am I here with? Who's been, you know? But then at the same time, you're like, wait a second. So this dude probably has not had an experience with a Black person who's had these kind of conversations and had these thoughts. And so he wanted to get to know more, right? And then, but this is the kicker to me. This is when the rubber meets the road on your question about cultures and how they interact, right? Because there's now a deep-seated belief that this guy has about N-words, you know what I'm saying? Which includes me, okay? And the question is, should I keep you in this category or not? You see what I'm saying? Or do I have to reframe the category that I have in my mind? And this is the sad truth. A lot of people will not reframe the category that they have in their mind, right? And what I mean by that is people put cultures in a box, and this is where prejudices come from, right? And they'll say, okay, I've experienced 4 Hispanic people doing the same thing, you know them Hispanics. I experienced 5 Nigerians doing the same thing, you know them Nigerians. I experienced, you know what I'm saying, 3 Akatas doing the same thing, you know them Akata. And so we start to put people in a box, and it's like, okay, I'm looking for the confirmation bias of the thing that I've experienced or been told before, based off of, instead of treating people as individuals and also understanding their cultural heritage. So again, you got to start training people the way to interact with you. Why is this so significant? Especially to my young people listening, and even some of my older people listening. The reason why you're stuck in certain cycles is because of the language that you use and the language you allow people to use toward you. And the fact that you let people call you the N-word, the B-word, the this, the that, and the third, and the fact that you sit up there and allow it is what creates the cycle, right? Because you answer to those things. And that's why, you know, again, culture clash, culture interaction, You got to come to a point where you say, okay, this is who I am. I get this is part of the culture, but this part of the culture will not be me. You know what I'm saying? And not determine who I am. So I know that was kind of a long story, but I wanted to share that and kind of get off my chest because I think it was appropriate. So yeah, Olay.
Not long at all. Very good. Daniel, thank you so much. Festus, got anything?
No, man. No, man. It's just insane. Good to hear it, man. I'm hearing all the different aspects. Like, it's crazy how people think that they can say something to you and it's okay after they say. I don't know. It's just weird how people think they can say it to you, but then other people, it's just. I'm like, man, people are off. People just crazy as sin, bro.
It's a crazy world.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's why we're here, man, to help make sense of a crazy world. I think, especially now, it's so funny. I was listening to this principal in San Angelo just talk about the dire situation it is right now for kids and just how real it is out there for kids and stuff. And it's like, yeah, and they're really going through it. They're going through it. Teachers going through it. Everyone's going through it. So you really have to have those avenues for students to really be able to release. I feel like, it's really hit them a lot. And so, that's why we're here. One of the other things, and I don't want to delve too deep into it, but it's a quick story. Festus, when you were talking, you reminded me of this story. When I was bartending, there was a older white gentleman that asked me, he said, why do Black people have such a woe is me mentality? And, I think about that was probably 5-6 years ago. And I still think about it periodically because it reminded me, I think what brought it up, Festus, was when you brought up the Jewish and the Palestinian looking at the same place, tell two different stories. It's the fact that this man had access to the same things, like my parents did, as far as media, but because of circles, right? The languages that are spoken, right? And the fact that whatever, you did a really good job of explaining that. You said wherever you fit in someone's mind as far as cultures, he hadn't, gone out of that culture. He hadn't really communicated or done anything with anyone outside of that culture to see that, to really understand the history or other perspectives or other cultures. And so it was just funny that you said that. It was really good. Another thing that I think is big is the idea of influences. We talked about this about 4 weeks ago. One of the things, and I'm sure we all kind of felt, and actually, Festus, I think that Man at the Beach was kind of dealing with this, was kind of seeing this, was people used to tell me when I was younger, man, you sound white. Or I would have never thought, you sound white. And for the longest, I used to get really upset. When people would say things like that. Because my response would always be like an African, what is white? To you, what is this white you speak of? It wasn't until I had, people like you, Festus, other people who were like, I think they're just trying to say you're well-spoken.
Yeah.
And, or you sound like you have a certain sense about yourself. But it's just funny how culturally we associate that, or they associated that with being white,
Bro, the dude we like to listen to, Dr. Kajufu? Remember
Yes.
Dr. Kajufu?
Yes.
Man.
I was actually showing one of his videos on Friday to one of my students. Man, we ain't playing this year.
I would have loved to be in your class, bro, because I bet you'd just be like, you know what, forget what the rules say. I'm gonna show you the truth. But he said a very powerful thing about the same thing where if speaking articulate and intelligent is acting white, then what is acting Black? Right? What's the definition then of acting Black? And see, this is the thing about cultures, right? And this is why a lot of people who, right now they're hating on code switching and stuff like that. I'm like, nah, I think code switching is cool because number one, everybody does it. Like a lot of Black people think they're the only ones who have to code switch. No, everybody does it. I remember somebody was trying to buy some stuff from our church, him and his wife, and is a gift of speaking in tongues. They went straight to tongues on me. You know what I mean? They went straight, and so that I couldn't know what they was talking about as they were trying to worm the way out the deal. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, wait a second. You see what I'm saying? If we both, and see, this is where, man, I don't want to go too deep into this. This is where, okay, if this is the real thing about cultures clash and the interaction is that if you have a layered cultural experience, which one dominates? Right? If you're saying, okay, I'm going with this particular cultural identity, which whether it might be a religious identity or it might be a location identity or something, which one dominates? And in most people, it depends on which one benefits them at the time. And see, to me, that's something I think we need to kind of get away from. If, we're supposed to be bringing peace and all this other type of stuff, you know what I'm saying? No, you need to let it flow, which one is more communicable at the time, you know what I'm saying? Or even the one that helps the other person at the time. You see what I'm saying? But that's a whole nother thing, man. That's a whole nother thing. Let me let you finish, Olay.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful conversations. Absolutely. Yeah. These are things that definitely need to be talked about. And we can go back to what we mentioned earlier. Don't make assumptions. Never make assumptions. If you notice, a lot of these things that we've talked about are based off of face value, or that quote of, judging a book by its front cover. We make assumptions. They affect so much about how we overall act around, communicate, treat other people, right? And so I think that's a really good thing to take from what we talked about today. Never make assumptions. Never make assumptions. Okay. All right, let's talk about one more. Let's go over one more. Key principle. We'll do one after this. Key principle number 13. It's not about where you're from. It's about where you're at. It's not about where you're from. It's about where you're at. I think everything we've done from where we started to where we are at has done a really good job of bringing this all together with this key principle. If you don't mind, talk a little bit more about this key principle. Talk a little bit more about this key principle and what does it mean as far as culture and language, location, tradition, belief, history, all those things, and how it kind of all comes together.
Yeah, that principle, I came up with that principle probably in my early 20s, that I would say to myself, you know what I'm saying? And I think I said to the homies every once in a while, but the key thing about that principle is not from where you're from, it's where you're at. A lot of people, they let the mindset of where they're from dominate where they are now. And the fact that you do that means that you cannot actually grow. You can't actually mature. So the thing is, it's not about where you're from, it's about where you're at, right? Where you at now, okay? You're not where you were a year ago. You're not where you were 6 months ago. You're not where you were 2 years ago. So why do you keep trying to bring that stuff over here? You keep trying to bring the same people. You keep trying to bring the same attitudes. You keep trying to bring the same emotions. You keep trying to bring the same mindsets. And so it's not where you're from, it's where you're at, right? And so if you look at more about where you're at, and I guess the next principle after that, it's not about where you're at, it's about where you're going, right? But that's a whole nother thing, but which I need a copy. Where my copyright at? You know what I'm saying? But now the truth of the matter is, if you really start to think like that, you know what I'm saying? It helps you grow and mature so much faster, right? Than to just hold on to this identity or that thing or this, that, right? And don't get me wrong, your overall identity, and that's why we talk about being known, doing your character should be consistent, right? But you can still grow in the depths and the knowledge of your character, if that makes sense, right? Like the thing is, if somebody was to say, oh, like, who are you to me? I'm a Nigerian American Christian Black male. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of crust of my identity. The more you know about those things, the more you will understand me to a certain degree. You know what I'm saying? And even though people are trying to exist outside of these labels, right? Which, don't get me wrong, you should exist outside labels. The labels are also there for a reason, right? Because literally they give definition. Imagine trying to, okay, there's a reason why you have a water bottle. The water's clear, the bottle's clear, right? But you cannot walk around with the water just in your hand, right? The bottle gives definition to what's inside of it. You see what I'm saying? And so this is how we have to really like start to think about things, because I understand we don't want to be labeled by people, but we also have to understand that labels do have a certain value and have a certain place, you know what I mean? And roll with it that way. So yeah, go ahead, Olay, take on. I hope I explained that well.
Absolutely, you do. Thank you so much for that. And I think you brought up the perfect spot, and I'm just going to leave it on this note. You did a wonderful job of explaining that definition where you said, I am a Nigerian American Christian Black male. In there identifies so much about who you are and your culture. You're able to go back and learn about what existed before you and so many things that determine your present based off of your history, all the different aspects of culture. And so I'll just leave us on this point, on this note right here. What if you do not know your identity? What if you do not know your identity? Where does that leave you? So I say that to the man who those years ago asked me why Black people have a woe is me mentality, right? I say that to that man. All right, Festus, wonderful conversation this Sunday, wonderful conversation. Folks, I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. This was good. This was a really good conversation. That Easter break I got some time to come up with some sauce over there. No juice. Got the sauce today.
He's saucy.
You know, the juice, remember that guy from Best Buy? The juice will last you about how long juice stay in your fridge? About a week?
A couple days, a couple weeks? Yeah.
Couple days. You got some barbecue sauce in your fridge? How long has that sauce been in your fridge?
Yeah. You want the sauce? Yeah.
About 2019? Still good though, right? That sauce.
Yeah.
That sauce is everlasting. From generation to generation, folks, it's been another wonderful session here with Ladder Your Success. Free student mentoring, as always. Daniel Hill, God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us, blessing us. Festus, thank you so much for being here. My name is Olay. Festus, hit him with the sand because I always forget it.
So listen, there are legitimate excuses for not going to college. There's no legitimate excuse for not having an education. I'm Festus and Olay. He is Daniel Hill. He is Olayinka Sharonke, and we are out. Thank you so much. Y'all be blessed now. All right, Facebook.
Oh, you still there? Well, thank you so much for listening to the LYS podcast.